First up, we've got the Thursday night matchup of the Green Bay Packers and the Arizona Cardinals. This was a battle of the gladiators. Uh, Kyler struggled a little bit, though. He threw 33 passes, completing 22 of them, and tossed for 274 yards. He rushed for 21. He didn't throw any touchdowns, and he threw 2 picks. That was a pretty tough outing on primetime. What did you guys think of his performance?
Definitely not up to par with what we've seen from him the past 7 other weeks of this season. I mean, he should have had a touchdown on the very last play, but AJ Green's controller just died halfway through it.
I mean,
Yeah,
post game, AJ said he did not see that ball at all. Like, obviously, you didn't see the ball. You didn't turn around till it was in the defender's hand.
it looked
But
like he
anyway,
might have been run blocking.
I think he might have. My theory is that Kyler may have called an audible and AJ just didn't hear it.
Right.
That's a total possibility. It could have just been miscommunication. That's what everybody on Thursday Night Football and on ESPN were saying the next day. It was just miscommunication.
Yeah, AJ had 5 receptions for 50 yards. Other than, the play that decided the game, he had a pretty decent game. D Hop had 2 receptions for 66 yards. No touchdowns because Kyler didn't throw any. Chase Edmonds had 7 attempts for 30 yards and a touchdown, and James Conner had 5 attempts for 22 yards and a touchdown. So the running game didn't necessarily get a ton of attention, but it was how the Cardinals put points up on the board. Just kind of, I don't know, that's a little bit different from how they've been playing offense. What do you guys think of kind of that approach? I don't know. I thought they'd run the ball more.
I mean, Kyler threw the ball. He got 270 yards, but I guess whenever they got down in the red zone, they just finally turned around and gave it to their backs.
It is a little different. I think it was good play calling. Play calling there in Arizona, there especially in the red zone, because if you're so used to just that passing game that they have, because they have a really good receiving core over there. Um, you're gonna throw those defenses off, and I think that's what they did with that run game. And most offenses are used to seeing Kyler Murray just take off, get going, and everything. But once you switch it up just that little bit, you can score. But it didn't matter in the end. They still lost.
Yeah, it wasn't really the Cardinals played bad. It was just the Packers played better. Aaron Rodgers tossed for 184 yards for 22 completions, 37 attempts, and he had 2 touchdowns. Both of those went to Randall Cobb. Cobb had 3 receptions for 15 yards. So when he did catch the ball, it mattered quite a bit. Tanyan had 3 receptions for 49 yards. And Aaron Jones had 7 receptions for 51 yards. He led the team in yards in the air, I guess receiving. A.J. Dillon had himself a good game. He kind of split carries with Aaron Jones. Dillon had 78 yards. Jones had a good game as well on the ground with 59 yards and a touchdown. So Dillon doesn't necessarily get all of the attention or a whole lot of attention in that backfield, but since the Packers were without 3 of their starting receivers, it wasn't much of a surprise to see him kind of get the power back, the lead back role, if that makes any sense. Since Jones is a pretty effective receiver out of the backfield.
I
Jones
think AJ Dillon on any other team would be the feature back. Give him if imagine if Baltimore would have traded for AJ Dillon.
Yeah,
that
that would be nasty,
that'd be
wouldn't it?
that'd be one hell of a backfield.
Yeah, I like AJ Dillon. I would like to see him get a lead role at some point in his career.
It's
I
just
love Aaron Jones. I'd like to see AJ Dillon maybe go somewhere else.
Aaron Jones has already cemented himself in that offense and what he brings to it. AJ Dillon is just a complementary role to that off. Like now with Aaron Jones is like the elusive back, and then AJ comes in. But I just feel like he would be like what Jonathan Taylor is in Indianapolis, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Putting up those
Jones
numbers.
Jones plays kind of a Christian McCaffrey role right now. I mean, he can run the ball well. He can catch it out of the backfield no matter what route you throw him on. But Dylan is not that featured back like you guys said, and yet here he is leading the league or leading the team in yards and rushes in that game. No touchdowns, but they got the run game going. Sure, neither of them got above 100 rushing yards, but they got the run game going, and that's really all they needed to get down in the red zone and Rodgers throw two touchdown passes.
Yeah, the run game, especially with your starting three receivers out, is super important. No matter who it is, you don't need that 100-yard rusher whenever you've got two really good guys in the backfield to split carries.
Alrighty, so hopping over to the Pittsburgh Steelers Cleveland game, it was a very tough defensive matchup. Steelers ended up pulling it out 15-10. Cleveland's only points came off of their very first drives of the first quarter and the third quarter, and then they just stalled out every other drive for the rest of the game. Najee went over 100 yards from scrimmage. Big Ben had a decent day. He went 22 for 34, 266 yards, a touchdown. Deontay led the team with 6 catches, 98 yards. His 50 of those yards came on the very final play with an RPO pass, so those numbers are kind of bloated. So we can go ahead and get this out of the way. I don't know who decided to call that fake field goal, and Mike Tomlin had to have okayed the call, but I don't think whoever thought of it should have a job in Pittsburgh at all.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw what Boswell posted, but I think it was something along the lines of dressed up for Halloween as a quarterback.
I like that. That's creative.
Yeah,
But
that was a bad decision.
The call there, I there are certain times where calling that is not a terrible idea, especially whenever you're just trying to throw them off and give yourself a little bit more momentum. But I don't. It doesn't. To me, after watching it a few times, it doesn't completely fall in the play calling. Boswell had a chance to get rid of the ball, and he had a chance to just scramble out of bounds rather than just keep moving over slowly and slowly and slowly. I think
Man,
it's
it's the kicker.
I know it's the
he's
kicker,
got Lamar
but
Jackson.
it's
Man.
it's game sense. At some point, you've got to realize there's a guy not 5 yards from me who's broken free. I need to do something.
That man has probably never been asked to do anything like that ever. Even in
No,
high school, he was probably still what position did he play in high school? Do we know?
No, Boswell, he has thrown a touchdown on that play before to a swing tackle against the Broncos a couple years ago. So he has done this before, but he did not have the look that he had against the Broncos. That he should have just thrown it away or just tried to go headfirst into the end zone. You were that close. It was on the 2-yard line. Either way, but going off of that, Steelers changed in the second half with that happening. I saw a stat with Big Ben's 266 yards. Like 190 of them came in the second half with him knowing that, hey, we can't kick a field goal. We have to go for this. And I kind of like the way the offense looked coming out of half. It looked a lot different. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's important to see how teams can play in those pressure situations. Our kicker's out. What are we going to do now? And I think going forward, it gives the Steelers a little bit more confidence on taking risky shots or making risky plays or even going for it on fourth down. I think it's something that offense like really needed just to see that they can be aggressive and that they should be a little bit more aggressive on offense.
No, most definitely. But going over to the Cleveland side, their running game was not anything to yell and scream about. They were the second leading rushing team going into this game. They were held to a total of 96 yards. That's not a good number if you in the grand scheme of things. But when you look at it, Nick Chubb only had 61 yards on 16 carries. Johnson had 4 carries for 22 yards and a touchdown. So I thought they should have had Johnson in more of a Kareem Hunt role to keep them in this game. He was averaging 5 yards a carry.
Yeah, I think Johnson will probably get that role moving forward. They probably realized that he needs to fill that role at least while Hunt is gone. But I think once Kareem's back, he's got that role on lock.
Yeah, I mean Kareem started very well this season. Even having to play behind Nick Chubb, they had themselves a nice little two-back offense. And something I've noticed the last few years, a lot of teams are going to a two-back offense, and it might have been a thing a lot beforehand, but it feels like now more than ever we're seeing a lot more teams with two running backs they can go to depending on the situation. You don't have to just sit and rely on that one specific back, because there's a lot of talent in the league right now, but whenever one of them goes down, it's next man up mentality, and I think the Browns need to give Johnson those looks as if he is the next man up and he's taking over that role.
I mean,
100%.
hell, in his first start, he had 100 yards. I mean, it was against the Broncos without Von Miller, who's now a LA Ram. We'll talk about that later. So.
Yes, sir, we will.
Baker didn't have a bad day. He went 20 for 31 for 225 yards. No touchdowns, no picks. He held the ball a lot on third downs, got sacked 4 times. Just not wasn't so much as it was on his fault. It's just after those first couple of drives, it just seemed that everything would just fizzle out. Jarvis Landry had 5 catches for 65 yards, but he had at least from what I saw, 3 major drops that caused the game, that swung it in our favor. And even coming down to the final play where he fumbled the ball and the former Brown Joe Schobert picks it up and makes a play. Or Joe Schobert forces the fumble and TJ Watt picks it up. I'm sorry.
Man, that must hurt.
Then
Former guy.
And then after that drive, the Browns got the ball back with 4 minutes left, so they had a chance to have the final say in it. And a false start from Rashard Higgins, and then another dropped pass from it was high, but then again it hit him in the hands. Jarvis should have caught it, but those are what ultimately swung it in Pittsburgh's favor.
Let's talk about that Patriots-Chargers game. The Patriots walked into SoFi and beat the Chargers 27-24. Let's talk about the Chargers first. Herbert, he had himself an alright day. 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. He was 18 for 35 on the day. Justin Jackson had 79 yards. He had 3 attempts. I don't know how long the scamper was for, but I'm going to assume that he went on for a nice little rush.
So on those 3 carries and those 79 yards, he had a long of 75.
Okay, so yeah. Austin Eckler had 11 carries for 64 yards and a touchdown, and Eckler also had 60 receiving yards. Keenan Allen had 6 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. And Josh Palmer caught his only pass of the day for 25 yards for the other Herbert passing touchdown. The Patriots, they looked pretty good, Colby. That was a pretty good call on the spread last week.
I knew it. Just Belichick I knew coming down to the nuances, Belichick was going to pull it out, and winning by 3, I guess, hey, that counts.
Yeah, it does for sure.
It definitely.
After you made that point, you almost convinced me, but yeah, gotta stay where I'm at, I guess. Mac Jones, he had a pretty similar day to Herbert actually, at least in terms of passes and attempts. He passed for 18 for 35, just like Herbert. But Jones didn't have any touchdowns or interceptions, and he had 218 passing yards on the day. So it wasn't a bad day. Mistake-free football. You got the win and didn't throw any picks. You can't really ask for much more. Damian Harris rushed for 80 yards and a touchdown. And the rest of the points for the Patriots either came from their defense. Adrian Phillips had 2 interceptions. One was returned for a pick 6, which tremendously helped the Patriots. and then the rest were field goals. Nick Folk, I believe Nick Folk, was that right?
Yep, Nick Folk.
Yep.
Yeah. He had himself a day. I wonder how many fantasy points he got.
Don't use
Had to
kickers.
have been a
One,
yeah, I know.
yeah, 1 extra point and 4 field goals, so that'd be 13 points.
I mean, shoot, that's better than most of my flex players.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's not counting any other like bonus points that some leagues use. If you're just going based
Right.
off of pure points, it is about 13.
He would have done better than Devontae Smith.
That's true.
Or Devontae, my bad.
The Patriots just keep finding a way to win, though, don't they? They're not going away, are they? I didn't think that they were going to be that effective. They kind of got like a bunch of, I don't want to say like B-list players in the offseason, but they didn't necessarily get any stars. But I mean, it's the Patriots and you want to build a foundation, so I understand that. But I didn't think that they were going to be in dogfights like this, at least against teams like the Chargers, because the Chargers have proven themselves to be a kind of a contender this year, despite a couple tough losses to teams that they should have beat.
I mean, Jake brought it up last week how the Patriots have been within like 3 points of every single game of all the games that they've been in. So
Yeah, I mean, even the big games like the Buccaneers game, they only lost by a few points. The Cowboys game, they lost by a touchdown. So it's to me, it's just Bill Belichick that he is by far one of the best, if not the best coach in the league right now. He's like the Greg Popovich of football. They won't get any big stars in free agency, but they'll find a way to win as long as the coaching is right.
I like that comparison. Build a pop. I like that.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, I think it's also fair because Popovich is a defensive coach, Belichick is a defensive-minded coach.
Yeah,
Anyways,
100%.
Nick Folk is 36 years old, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that out there. He has been in the league for a minute.
Hey, and he's still putting up 3 points after 3 points after 3 points.
Then another 1 point. Don't forget about the 1 point.
My fault.
It's important. We'll take it off to the next game now. Tampa Bay, New Orleans. This was America's game of the week. I think it lived up to the hype. I really think it did. We'll start on Tampa Bay's side of the ball. Tom Brady doing Tom Brady things for the most part. 28 for 40 passing, 375 yards and 4 touchdowns, but 2 picks and 3 sacks. That's not something you expect to see out of Tom Brady. Giovanni Bernard, 30 yards on 2 rushing attempts, no touchdowns. Leonard Fournette, 8 rushing attempts, 26 yards, no touchdowns. They could not get the run game going, which I found a little bit surprising. Receiving, though, Chris Godwin had a day. 8 receptions, 140 yards, and a touchdown. Tyler Johnson, 5 receptions, 65 yards. Cyril Grayson, I believe that's how you say it. Is it
Yeah.
Cyril Grayson? Yeah. 1 catch for 50 yards and a touchdown. And I remember he had I believe it was the last touchdown for the Buccaneers. That was his first snap in an NFL game. Or
Wow.
his first start in an NFL game, I should say. Uh
Still.
yeah, it was, and he was a track runner in college. Did not play a snap of college football.
Wow, really?
Yep, and I remember watching it with some of my buddies, and we said, "Imagine the pressure on him." He was so wide open; it was complete botched coverage by the Saints. There was nobody near him for 15 yards at least by the time the ball got to him, and the pressure of him being that open and catching it in his first NFL game was insane. And he caught it and ran 50 yards for the touchdown.
Nah, he's getting paid for it.
He is. He is.
Easy for him. Come on now. No
Mike
pressure.
Mike Evans, though, kind of an off day. 2 receptions, 48 yards, still a touchdown, though. And then Bernard caught a 7-yard pass for a touchdown as well. Defensively, 1 sack from Ndamukong Suh, no interceptions, no forced fumbles. It was kind of an off day for that Tampa Bay defense, especially that front seven.
Yeah, you'd expect that front seven to be a little bit more effective.
Especially after Jameis went down.
Just after
Man,
up 100 yards to the Bears, the Saints come right back and get 150 yards rushing on them totally. So I think we're figuring out a way to stop the Buccaneers at least.
Yeah.
Keep Brady off the field.
Yep. As long as you can get that run game going, you can beat Tampa Bay is what it seems like right now, which is odd to say looking at how good that front seven is.
what was the time of possession for that game?
Let me look that up actually. I was wondering the same thing.
Here I
Um time of
go. Saints had 33 minutes. Bucks had it for 26.
Huh.
So it wasn't that big of a difference, but it
Yeah,
made all the difference.
100%.
We'll look at the Saints now. As I mentioned, Winston went down. Trevor Simien, first snaps since 2019 with the Jets. Threw his first touchdown pass since 2017. He was 16 for 29 coming in for Jameis Winston, had 159 yards and a touchdown pass, only took 1 sack and no interceptions. Kamara, 19 rushes, 61 yards. Winston rushed for 40 while he was still in. Mark Ingram, guess who's back? 6 rushes, 27 yards. Kamara also had a touchdown, I forgot to mention. And then Deontay Harris, 1 rush for 22 yards. And Simien had 2 rushes for 2 yards. His longest was 3, so took a sack, as I mentioned. As far as receiving goes, Kevin White led with 38 yards on 1 reception.
Your
Deontay
guy.
Harris, their rushing yard or their receiving yards were very well spread out. Deontay Harris had 35 yards, just 3 off of White, and then Traquan Smith had 33 yards, 2 off of Harris, and he had a touchdown. Garrett Griffin, the tight end, 30 yards on 3 receptions. Marquez Galloway, 3 receptions, 30 yards. Ingram, 2 receptions, 25 yards. It was just very well spread out. And then Alex Arma, the fullback, 1 reception, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. Brian Johnson was 3 for 3 on field goals and 3 for 4 on extra points. I want to see those fantasy points.
Yeah, seriously.
And then we can't talk about this game without talking about that defense. They had 3 sacks, 1 from Cam Jordan, 1 from somebody help me pronounce the name. It's Tano Pass. All right.
I have.
Yeah, I
Tano
cannot pronounce his name.
I don't know. We shouldn't have even
Hey,
tried
you
to
know
say
what? Shout out to the man. He sacked Tom Brady.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. He sacked Tom Brady. You've got that on your resume. And then Quan Alexander had another sack. C.J. Gardner Johnson interception, and then P.J. Williams. His only defensive stat of the game was a pick 6.
That's all you need, baby.
That's all you need.
Yeah,
So
seriously.
New Orleans, even with Jameis going out, and Trevor Simien, who hadn't thrown a touchdown pass since 2017, comes in and leads them to the win. Are the Saints for real?
No, I don't know about that. I just think that Sean Payton is Brady's kryptonite. I don't know if the Saints in general, Cam Jordan, all of them, they just seem to have his number. I I have my questions about the Saints moving forward without Jameis. I don't know if they're going to keep Simeon. If they do, I don't know if that's going to necessarily translate to consistent winning. They might go to Taysom Hill. Who knows how that's going to go? I know, they had the quarterback competition, but I mean, how much of a competition was it really, and how much was it, okay, Taysom, yep, this is a competition, and oh, you lost. Go play every other position for us now, special teams included.
Well,
You know what I
Taysom
mean?
Taysom wasn't active for the game. I do remember seeing that, and I think he's
Yeah.
out for 2 more weeks.
Oh.
So it's basically just Trevor Simien or Ian Book for the Saints. After this game, I'd imagine they at least start with Simien next week.
Yeah, I think you got to,
Yeah,
especially against the performance he had against that defense. I mean, he proved himself to at least start next week.
they are
Start him till
playing.
he
Yeah, to start him till he can't prove it. You know,
exactly.
they are playing the Falcons next week, so I feel like that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that'll be a good test whether that was kind of like a fluke,
hmm
what have you. Teams kind of I feel like they struggle against backup quarterbacks because they're used to game planning against the starter and then the backup comes in and they kind of alter the offense. The offense alters the offense
yeah,
and the defense just can't adjust to it quick enough in game to, be able to catch back up.
right. It's especially it's not so much game planning in the NFL as it is in college. And I've seen that the past few weeks with a few college teams, especially my own. If your game planning isn't if your game planning is focused so much on one player, then somebody else comes in and you weren't prepared for that. It changes the whole game immensely. Um,
Exactly.
but it is different in the NFL than it is in college, though. In college, you almost have to game plan for that one player, and it's typically the quarterback. In the NFL, that's where the stars are. That's why the NFL is the professionals. So, but I guess Simeon just made all the difference. I guess he really did. I did see a stat after the game. Brady is, I believe it's 1-3 against the Saints since coming to Tampa Bay, and he's only lost, I want to say, 5 games against every other team that he's played since he's been in Tampa.
That's crazy.
Something,
I wonder
something
what
in
it
Sean Payton.
is.
I really want to know. It's something in Sean Payton's brain, I guess. I genuinely don't understand what it is about them because I think only one of those games that Brady played was in the playoffs, and obviously, I'd assume
Right.
I think that was the one that they won,
Yeah.
and I'd assume it was in Tampa.
No, it
But
was in.
was it in New Orleans?
Yeah, that was the divisional round.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Well, then that debunks my point. I was gonna say it must be the dome then.
But that was also in COVID with no fans. That Superdome was packed to the gills, I'm sure,
Yeah, I'd imagine.
with a bunch of screaming fans on Halloween. I would hate to been on the opposing side as well.
There's something
Um.
about football on Halloween that is just so fun.
Yeah. 100%. I'm sure the Buccaneers got an earful from all of the New Orleans fans.
God, I'd believe it. All right, Colby, you got the next game?
Yeah. So go ahead and transitioning over to that. Jets got a statement win over the Bengals while they fall to a trap game. Jets ended up pulling it up 34-31. Neither offense had a bad game. It was just no defense was played. Joe Burrow went 21 for 34, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Tyler Boyd ended up throwing a pass for 46 yards. Their ground game wasn't nothing spectacular. Joe Mixon had 14 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. Like to see those numbers better than what they are. T. Higgins led the team with 4 catches and 97 yards. Tyler Boyd also had a receiving touchdown with on 69 yards and 5 catches. Joe Mixon had 4 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown, and Jamar Chase ended up pulling in 3 catches for 32 yards and a touchdown. So he didn't put up the crazy yards that we're used to, but he still ended up finding the end zone. Logan Wilson led their defense with 12 tackles. Jesse Bates had a pick along with Jermaine Pratt. And that's about it for the Bengals. But going over to the Jets side of the ball, Mike White had a hell of a game. He ended up going 37 for 45 for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. The two picks is not what you like to see, but whenever you throw for 400 yards, it's kind of easy to put those on the back burner. He also ended up setting not a rookie record, but most completions most completions by a starter in their very first game with 37. And he also joined Cam Newton by throwing 400 yards in their very first career start. Michael Carter had also one hell of a game. Had 15 carries, 77 yards, a touchdown, averaged 5 yards a carry, and also hauled in 9 catches for 95 yards. That led the team in receiving and rushing. Jamison Crowder had 8 catches, 84 yards. Ty Johnson ended up pulling in five catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Tyler Croft had the huge touchdown to give them the lead on 2 catches, 20 yards. And Braxton Berrios ended up pulling in a touchdown. Going over to defense, C.J. Mosley had the most tackles with 10. Shaq Lawson had the interception in the fourth quarter to get the momentum into the Jets side to have them pull that 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. But yeah, just not a lot of defense being played in this game.
Not at all. Jeez. I have a question for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
If Zach Wilson started that game, is he throwing for 400 yards? Is he even throwing for 300? Should he be scared or worried? Like, is Mike White going to take the number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft's job?
I don't want to say that, but I just want to. I would hope that Zach Wilson would have been able to do this against the Bengals, but then again, we will never know.
I think
I don't. Ugh.
it's
It's
another
a bad
thing.
situation in New York.
I think it's just another thing of oh, is Zach Wilson good in only just specific systems? Is he just not doing well in the Jets system? It's like what I said with Sam Darnold most of his years in New York. He's just doesn't fit that system correctly, and now he goes to
No,
Carolina and he's playing well.
nobody fits the Jets system. The last person who somewhat fit the Jets system was Mark Sanchez.
And he fumbled
And then
after bumping into a lineman's
and
butt.
then he ran into the ass of a lineman. So
Yeah, I mean,
I, I don't think that I don't think it's the scheme's fault. I mean, shit, they bring in new people yearly. I mean, you can't bring in all these. One of them has to be good, right? Like
mhm.
one of these coordinators had to have been good, and they just underperformed. There's no way that every single person that they have hired was just a bad hire, straight up. You know what I mean? Whether it be coordinators, position coaches, yada yada. I think it's more. I mean, Zach Wilson, he's a rookie, so yeah, I guess you can't really expect him to be lighting up offenses. You can't hold him to the standard of like a Andrew Luck his rookie year or Justin Herbert last year, something like that. You kind of have to hold them to their own standard, individually. But Mike White made a case for QB1.
Brought
Yeah,
some unnecessary controversy over into New York whenever we all thought it was just going to be Zach Wilson's job forever.
yeah. I I I don't know. It's such a weird thing. It might just be a one game thing, and then Mike White comes out next week and just throws mallards all over the field.
That's the beauty of the NFL.
With a team actually being able to game plan for him, that might actually happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of goes back to the backup quarterback conversation.
I think I did want to bring this up actually. I was on TikTok after the game happened, and I saw somebody had commented on a post saying Mike White would throw for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
I did
And
see that.
it was 22 hours before the game started when he commented that. I checked the timestamp and everything. And he threw for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It's a crazy world we live in. I love God. I love football. And that is one of the reasons.
I know the better that put, I don't know, almost over $1,000 on Mike White leading the week in passing. I know he's a happy man right now.
Oh yeah,
Has to be. Oh my god.
I don't know how. I don't remember the numbers, but I know he put over $1,000 on Mike White, and it hit.
I do want to say, I wonder if there was an over under bet on one of the off websites where you can just bet on random stuff. I want to know if there was an over under bet on how many times they mentioned Taysom Hill being out in the New Orleans game. Because once Jameis went down, it felt like you heard Taysom Hill's name every other line.
I mean, whenever you sign him to that extension or whatever, 4 years, $150 million, you'd hope he'd be out there. I'm ready to see what he does whenever he gets back out there.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch him out there under center.
Imagine he just lights it up and carries the Saints to the playoffs. That'd be a storyline.
It would. After last week, I talked about Jameis Winston's surprising year so far, and then here comes Taysom Hill, stealing the spotlight. All right, we're gonna go into the last game here, and this is a fun one. So Sunday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys at Minnesota Vikings. What a game! What a game it was! What a game it was! We had Cooper Rush getting the start for the Cowboys, and he had himself a nice little game. 24 for 40 passing, 325 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a pick. Took 3 sacks, but it's Cooper Rush, you know. Zeke was held to just 50 rushing yards. His longest was 8. Tony Pollard held to 26 rushing yards. Cooper Rush he had 2 rushing yards as well. Tack it on. I'm riding the Cooper Rush train right now. I'm a Cooper Rush guy.
Yeah, no, I'm a Dak Prescott guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, listen. You're not gonna win much more games with Cooper Rush over Zach Prescott, but Cooper Rush had a game. If we're being honest,
good for
uh,
Cooper. Good for Cooper Rush getting this win, but I'm ready to see Dak Prescott.
yeah, I want Dak back. Amari Cooper though, 8 receptions, 122 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, 6 receptions, 112 yards. Cedric Wilson, 3 receptions, 84 yards and a touchdown. Zeke had 4 receptions and 23 yards. The yards were really just taken by 2 guys, and it was the 2 guys you'd expect out of Dallas. Um, Defensively, Micah Parsons, 10 tackles and an assisted tackle, leading the team. No interceptions, 1 forced fumble from Randy Gregory, and that was the game. That was the story of the game for Dallas. Was Cooper Rush.
Do we
Uh,
have a timetable on when Dak's coming back? Is it going to be like next week or anytime soon?
I
um,
I don't think they're gonna rush it. From what the commentators kept saying during the broadcast, they were just gonna let. They don't have a timetable for Dak yet. I think is what it is.
yeah, he's questionable right now. According to this report from yesterday on the score, he is expected to play in week 9.
Okay, so yeah, he's expected to play this week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
he said that if it was a playoff game, he would have played. So I assume, he'll be back next week. Because if
yeah
he's feeling like that, then you would hope that he wouldn't miss 2 weeks in a row. I don't know. I feel like it would be a little bit worrisome if he were to miss next week. It might be a little bit worse than they're letting it out to be.
yeah. I mean, if it's a playoff game and you're saying he would have played, then that means it wasn't truthfully as bad as it once seemed. But I also wouldn't blame them for who does Dallas play next week. Actually, they play the Broncos at home. I wouldn't blame them if they sat out Dak one more week. just to get him some more, like just to make sure he's 100%.
Right. That was
Uh,
a big loss for Minnesota.
it really was. Kirk Cousins, 184 yards and a touchdown. Also took a sack. He was 23 for 34, 5 passing. Dalvin only 78 rushing yards on 18 rushes. Then Kirk had 18 rushing yards. He was second on the team on 3 rushes. Adam Thielen, 6 receptions, 78 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Conklin had 5 receptions for 57 yards. Justin Jefferson only 2 receptions for 21 yards. That was basically it for the offense. Harrison Smith, I thought he looked really good in the game. But he was tied for most solo tackles, and then had 2 assists. He had 7 tackles, 2 assisted tackles. Xavier Woods had 7 interceptions. Wow, imagine that. He had 1 interception. Excuse me. Harrison Smith also forced a fumble that was recovered by Anthony Barr. That Minnesota defense, I kind of expected him to hold off just one more touchdown from the Cowboys, but I guess Cooper Rush was just too much for that Minnesota defense.
Hey man, Cooper Rush.
Who'd have thunk it?
Uh, that was a big loss. Everson Griffin out for the season. I don't know if you guys have seen that report, but
Yeah, I
You mean
saw
it looks
that.
like
Daniel Hunter?
or yeah, sorry.
I think Griffin got hurt too, if I'm not
Did
mistaken.
he?
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
I thought it for some
I
reason I
can
thought it
double
was
check
Everson
that real
Griffin.
quick.
I know Daniil's out for the season. But that offense and the
Yeah,
Vikings,
I think you're right.
there were multiple plays where there was another option open for Kirk Cousins, but he just kept settling for the little underneath route that wasn't going anywhere.
I'm sorry, I'm looking to see if he is injured or not.
You're good.
I don't think he
Yeah,
is.
no, I don't think I think it was just
Yeah,
Danielle Hunter.
I think it was just Hunter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
Danielle.
my fault then.
Or no, you were right.
Oh,
yeah. That's yeah. You were right. You were correct. Um, anything else to add to that game? It was a really. I really thought the or that Minnesota could probably pull out that win, but that defense I guess just struggled a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, you would have hoped for that Minnesota team to be able to shut down Cooper Rush. You know, they were kind of on the fence. You know, maybe can they get into that conversation for the wild card spot? I don't see them beating out the Packers, so that division's kind of unlocked. But you know, the wild card spot, especially with Jameis down, is kind of a little bit open. But
I
that
think
loss,
I think
like six,
that's
seven.
yeah. I think that 7th spot is what most people are fighting for right now.
hmm
I think you can almost chalk 5 and 6 up to a few teams. It's really up to 3 teams who get that spot, and then that last team is going to be fighting with the rest of the league for 7.